Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in again. So we're going to continue with the shrimp theme this week. Now you can use the technique to tie the underbody if you follow the link in the description below. So we won't bother doing that section today. We'll just get straight into tying the fly. This is a fly called the Duracell Shrimp. I originally saw the pattern from a friend of mine called Andy Saunders. Ties an amazing shrimp. But yeah, we'll get straight into the tying. Definitely one worth having for your box for those grayling. So let's get into it. Right, so in the vise, I've got a grab pupa size 12 from Partridge. So as I said, we've done the underbody previously in a previous video, so follow the description for that. I'm going to come in with some UTC 17 red. I'm going to tie that in and cut away our butt section. So the next thing we're going to put on is a little bit of wax. And then I'm going to come in with some UTC Ulta wire in Brassie, and this is the red colour. So I'm going to tie that on at the bottom, and I'm going to take that round right into the base around the bend. I'm going to come back up, just make sure it's all nicely tied in. So then just to help me, I'm just going to reposition my fly a little bit for when we tie this shell back on, and I'm going to tie that probably 2/3 of the way down. So the next thing I'm going to put in is some shell back, and this is the number 11 colour. So it's a really nice sort of blue colour. So I'm going to cut a little point out the end. And I'm going to just tie that in right on the back of the shank with a couple of tight turns, and then I'm going to pull it down right into that bend. Now I do some loose turns here because what I'm trying to do is not crease that shell back, because it does have a tendency to crease on you, and you want when it pulls over the dubbing to be quite neat. So I'll just cover that up. I'm happy with that. So I'll just check where we're at here. Yeah. So then the next thing is just to dub the body. So this is a UV ice dub in brown. So it's the same sort of dubbing that you'd use on a Duracell jig fly. And I'm going to create a dubbing loop with this. A dubbing noodle, sorry. And I don't want it too tight because I want to brush this out. So you don't have to be perfect. It's not like tying a dry fly or anything. That should do us. Just push that up. And then it's just a case of dubbing that body. And you'll see it does get a bit thicker as we get into the middle of the fly, and that just helps with that profile, for that shrimp-like profile. And as it's tied in, you can twist this if you want to thin it out a little bit. And you want to come right down, right behind the eye. You know, said on the last couple of videos, I see people leaving gaps to tie the heads in and things. I would always recommend you take that right down to the head. So I want a tiny bit more. That. That'll do us. And then I'm going to just put in a half hitch. And then I'm going to counter spin my thread, but before I do that, I'm just going to put a bit of wax on it. And that just stops anything slipping, just belt and braces. And I'm stretching this slightly, this shell back. This is the old style shell back. Unfortunately, they've changed it now, and it's not as easy to work with. It's not as supple. So I'm quite lucky that I've got quite a bit of this still. I managed to find an old batch, so I pretty much cleaned them out of it. So I'm going to do a couple of tight turns behind, pull my shell back, and a couple of turns in front, and then I'm going to put in another half hitch. Now I'm going to cord my thread up by giving it a clockwise spin while I just cut out the shell back, like that, and then I'm going to wax again. So and this really just helps that wire, as we're going to counter rib it, just stops it moving when you come to pull it out. So I'm going to neaten this head up just a little bit and come back a couple of turns, and I'm going to put another half hitch in there. That's where I want to tie my wire, sorry. So now it's just a case of counter ribbing. So we're just going to pull it under the fly, move any of these fibres that are going to get caught just to try and get as neat as fly as possible, and then we're going to do just open turns. And you'll see the reason we put that half hitch in, as I bang that thread as I'm ribbing, it just stops the fly unravelling. And then we're just going to do open turns all the way to that head, and then I'm going to do turn right over and lock it off, and another one and lock it, and then I can spin this out now. You can see we're doing that wax, that wire hasn't moved a single inch. So now I'm just going to neaten my head up and just create a nice head. So happy with that. I'm going to put a little bit more wax on now, and then it's just a case of whip finishing. So a couple of good whip finishes. And then we can cut our thread away. I've got a couple of stragglers there, so I'm going to get my cauterizer. And I'm just going to neaten that head off a little bit. That'll do me. Right, so now I'm just taking a black marker. This is one of the Cure colour markers. Really good. I got these at the BFFI. Yeah, really nice marker. So I'm just going to put a black head on this. So I'm going to colour that. Probably just down to that second wrap. And I'm coming right down the sides, making sure it's all nicely coated. So there we go, so that's that bit. So now it's just a case of UVing. So I'm going to take some Raidzap thin resin. Now you've got to be quite careful with this because it is quite runny. So I'm going to put a bit on the head, because you also need to be careful that you don't smudge that marker, because it does have a habit once you put the UV on to smudge. So I'm going to turn my fly upside down, and I'm just going to get rid of my UV now and get a bodkin, and I'm just going to rub that UV all around the fly. So as I say, you need to be careful because it is runny, so when you turn your fly upwards it can run down if you're not careful. You just want to make sure you've got a nice neat head. And I always recommend when you do this, you only brush forward. If you brush back, you will get some of that resin or some of the black marker to run up the back of the fly. So I never rub backwards, I only ever rub forwards, and I know I won't smudge that head. Because once you've cured it, it'll be fine. So I'm just neatening that off a bit. So yeah, quite happy with how that's looking. So now I'm just going to give it a cure with the UV light. So make sure it's all really nicely cured. And then the next thing we need to do is just brush out the fly itself with a dubbing brush. So that's all nicely cured. So I'm going to take my little dubbing brush. I'm going to give it a really good brush. Get as many of those fibres out as I can. Brush them down. Now, I have noticed this dubbing brush has broken a load of the little Velcro bits off the bottom, so I think I'm going to have to get a new one. So I'm going to turn my fly upside down, just give it a trim. So again, just trimming, just probably the, to the gape of the hook. A little bit more there. So yeah, happy with that. Just going to neaten this head, underneath this head a little. So that's pretty much the finished fly there. So as I say, definitely one you want to tie for your box for those grayling. Looks really, really nice. Really effective. So thanks everyone for tuning in again. Thanks for all the lovely messages and comments you've been putting. It does mean a lot to me. So I'll see you on the next video. Tight lines.